Mr. Speaker. I joined the Prime Minister in condolences to the police officer and the passenger who lost their lives in this tragic event yesterday. I also joined the Prime Minister in paying tribute to the late Jimmy Hood, who represented Clydesdale and later Lanark and Hamilton East. He was a good friend of all of ours, and he was a great fighter for the coal industry and the Mine Workers Union during the strike and after that, during his time here. We thank Jimmy for his work for the Labour movement. Mr. Speaker, in July, the International Trade Secretary said Brexit negotiations would be the easiest in human history. Does the Prime Minister still agree with that assessment?
Well, I'm very pleased to report to the Right Honourable Gentleman, as I've just said, negotiations are in progress and very good progress has been made in those negotiations. What my right honourable friend has been focusing on is the trade negotiations for the future. And indeed, because we are already a member of the European Union, when we leave, we will not be at the same basis in relationship with them as, say, Canada was in negotiating a trade agreement. And therefore, we do expect that we'll be able to get the deal that is right for the whole United Kingdom. What we need to do to be able to do that is to move on to phase 2. And if he's so concerned about easy negotiations, why did his MEPs vote against enabling us to do that?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister could always look behind herself. But Mr. Speaker, she hasn't succeeded in convincing many people. And yesterday, one Tory donor told the papers, and I quote, "Yesterday proved beyond doubt that the Prime Minister is not only weak, but it's her incompetence that's hobbling the UK." And he wasn't very kind about the rest of her front bench either, describing them as a bunch of jellyfish masquerading as a cabinet. Mr. Speaker, this is truly a coalition. This is truly a coalition of chaos. At the start of the week, it all seemed to be going so well. The Prime Minister had scheduled a lunch with Jean-Claude Juncker, followed by a press conference, and then to triumphantly return to the House to present her deal.
Order, order. Let me make it clear for the umpteenth time. No order. I know what's going on. I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for bowls over, but I can look after these matters. No one in this chamber is going to be shouted down. It will not happen. And if people think they can sit where I can't see them and make a raucous noise, they're very foolish. I know where they are and I know what they're up to, and it isn't going to work. End of subject. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But on her way back to Britain, someone forgot to share the details of the Irish border deal with the DUP. Surely, Mr. Speaker, there are 1.5 billion reasons why the Prime Minister really haven't forgotten to do that.
I think it was a little difficult to detect the question that there was within that interruption. But let me say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, as President Juncker said on Monday, there are still a couple of things that we're negotiating on. And he is confident that we will be able to achieve sufficient progress. But if he wants to wonder about plans for negotiations, perhaps he should look at his own front bench. The Shadow Chancellor used to say staying in the single market was not respecting the referendum. Now he says it's on the table. The Shadow Brexit Secretary, Shadow Trade Secretary, used to say staying in the customs union was deeply unattractive. Now he says it isn't off the table. Now I think we now know from the Shadow Chancellor what their approach really is. It's not having a plan at all. Because when asked what the Labour Party plan was, the Shadow Chancellor said, well, that's difficult for us. As we all know, the only thing the Labour Party is planning for is a run on the pound.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was unable to support her Brexit secretary when he tried to explain that a deal was supposed to be done in October but still hasn't been done by December. The leader of the DUP told Irish television she only got sight of the deal on Monday morning, 5 weeks after she first asked for it. 2 months after the original deadline for the first phase of talks and after Monday's shambles, is the Prime Minister now able to end the confusion and clearly outline what the government's position is now with regard to the Irish border?
I'm very happy to outline the position that I've taken on the Irish border with Northern Ireland. It is exactly the same position that I took in the Lancaster House speech, that I took in the Florence speech, that we have taken consistently in the negotiations, which is that we will ensure that there is no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. We will do that while we respect the constitutional integrity of the United Kingdom and while we respect the internal market and protect the internal market of the United Kingdom. And those Labour members who shout, "How?" that's the whole point of the second phase of the negotiations. Because we will deliver this. We aim to deliver this as part of our overall trade deal between the United Kingdom and the European Union. And we can only talk about that when we get into phase 2. We have a plan, he has none.
Jeremy Corbyn!
18 months after the referendum, the Prime Minister is unable to answer the question. And on Monday, as she thought she was coming here to make a statement, it was vetoed by the leader of the DUP. The tail really is wagging the dog here. Mr. Speaker, the Brexit secretary told BBC's Ma programme in June, in my job, I don't think out loud and I don't make guesses. I try and make decisions. You make those based on data. The data is being gathered. We've got 50, nearly 60 sectoral analyses already done. This House voted to see those analyses. But today, the Brexit Secretary told the Select Committee they actually don't exist. Well, can the Prime Minister put us out of our misery? Do they exist or don't they? Have they done the work or haven't they? That is surely one question she can answer after 18 months.
Can I make a gentle suggestion to the Leader of the Opposition? He asked me a question on the Northern Irish border. I answered the question. He then stood up and said I hadn't answered the question. Perhaps he should listen to the answers that I give. The House requested, as I understand it, 58 sectoral impact assessments. There were no 58 sectoral impact assessments. There was sectoral analysis. Over 800 pages of sectoral analysis has been published and made available to the Select Committee, and arrangements have been made available for members of this House to see it. We are very clear that we will not give a running commentary on negotiations as we proceed, but what we will do is work for what this country wants. We will ensure we leave the European Union in March 2019. We will leave the internal market, we will leave the customs union at the same time, and we will ensure there is no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland when we do it.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, this really is a shambles. All they've done is offered a heavily redacted, abbreviated version which has not been widely shared. And the Brexit Secretary said in September, Mr. Speaker, that £50 billion divorce payment was complete nonsense. The Foreign Secretary rejected any payment and said the EU could go whistle. So can the Prime Minister put before the House a fully itemised account that could be independently audited by the Office of Budget Responsibility and the National Audit Office on any proposed payment?
Well, because we haven't actually. We're at the point of progressing on to the next stage. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So the final settlement won't be agreed until we've actually got the whole of the deal agreed. But I have to say to the right honourable gentleman, he's asked me questions earlier about hard borders. You know, half the Labour Party wants to stay in the single market, half the Labour Party wants to leave the single market. The only hard border around is right down the middle of the Labour Party.
Mr. Speaker, 18 months since the referendum, no answers to the questions. Today, they haven't yet concluded phase one, no answers to the questions, and the DUP appear to be ruling the roost and telling her what to do. Mr. Speaker, whether it's Brexit, the National Health Service, social care, our rip-off railways, rising child poverty, growing pensioner poverty or universal credit, this government is unable to solve important issues facing this country. In fact, it's making them worse. The economy is slowing, more people in poverty, Brexit negotiations in a shambles. This government is clearly not fit for the future. If they can't negotiate a good deal, wouldn't it be better if they just got out of the way?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, week in and week out, he comes to this House making promises that he knows he can't deliver. And they keep doing it. At the election, he told students they would write off their student debt. Then he said, I did not commit to write off the debt. But what are the Labour Party doing? They're putting round leaflets which say Labour will cancel existing student debt. It's time the right honourable gentleman apologise for grossly misleading Labour leaflets.